Welcome to the Patrick Coffin Show. So glad you're hanging out. We have a first here. This is a two-hander interview, but not split screen, so no crosstalk, no problems. We're going to talk with Abby Johnson, who wrote the 2014 best-selling book Unplanned. I know Abby. You've interviewed her a bunch of times, most recently at the March for Life in San Francisco, and I saw her last week at the Hollywood premiere of the movie version of Unplanned. So Abby is our second interview, and we'll start with the actress who plays her in the film, actress Ashley Bratcher. Coming up on The Patrick Coffin Show. Touching that dial is strictly prohibited. Glad to have you aboard. Ashley Bratcher grew up in a small town in North Carolina and discovered a love of the theater in high school. She starred in Princess Cut, 90 Minutes in Heaven, and is now playing former Planned Parenthood director Abby Johnson in the upcoming biopic Unplanned. Ashley, thanks for coming on.
Yes, thank you for having me, Patrick.
When I walked into the theater, having known Abby, and I know her real-life attorney, Jeff Paradowski, and I was wondering how's this going to work in a 115 to 120-minute format on a 30-foot screen, like what's going to be left out and what's going to be included. And I have to say, at the top, I did not expect your performance. I thought this is going to be a nice pro-life movie that Christians can, feel good about themselves, and it'll come and go in a week. But you really brought it, and I wanted to ask you about how you first heard about Abby Johnson at all, and what was it like walking into the auditions?
Well, I didn't know anything about Abby until I decided to audition. I had a random Instagram follower who doesn't work in the film industry, had just been committed to praying for people in the industry. Mm-hmm. And somehow she thought of me, and she had seen this casting go out, and she messaged me and said, Ashley, I think that God is telling me you're meant to play this role. Well, I didn't know her, so I thought she was crazy, and I was kind of like, oh, thank you so much. That's very sweet. Right. And I blew it off. Well, a couple weeks later, she was really persistent, and she said, Ashley, you really, really need to audition for this role. Will you please audition? And so I said, okay, why not? Just send me the script, and I'll take a look at it. And when I got the script, I was blown away by Abby. I thought she was super cool. She worked at Planned Parenthood, and that was really all I knew about it, but I liked her personality and her spunk. And after that, I looked her up. And when I looked her up and I heard her testimony, that was what really rocked my world. Mm-hmm. And I knew after I heard what she described happening in that abortion procedure she witnessed, that I had just been blind. I had no idea. And my heart was broken. I wanted to be a part of this project, and I wanted to tell the story.
Ashley, I think a lot of people who grew up in, say, nominally Christian homes, or people who would generally describe themselves as pro-life, are still unaware of what kind of procedures go into the abortion procedure. At what stage in gestation? Was that a learning curve? I mean, at playing Abby, you saw the ultrasound, which is, to me, the heart of the film right there. But did you read into how long into the pregnancy it's permitted by law? What are the different methods of abortion? Because I think people, they would get out of their slumber if they knew what abortion is, instead of just a word that's used in an argument.
Yeah, exactly. And that was where I stood before. I think I was in line with the general public in the sense that we don't really know what happens during an abortion procedure. We don't know most of the legislation that deals with abortion. I have a child of my own, mm-hmm. and even still, I didn't think that much about fetal development before. And a 13-week-old baby, you see a child. I mean, there is no denying that it has fully formed hands, fingers, toes. And that was what she witnessed in the procedure she saw in the ultrasound guided abortion. Mm-hmm. And even a child at around 21 days has a beating heart. These are things that I wasn't thinking about beforehand. I think a lot of people don't consider it until we put a face to the victim, and that's what the movie does.
I've interviewed the late Bernard Nathanson, one of the co-founders of the National Abortion Rights Action League, and he's played by Nick Loeb, whom I've interviewed as well for the upcoming Roe v. Wade movie. And it was the 1970s era, really primitive fetology images that Dr. Nathanson saw for the first time. He had actually aborted one of his own sons. And so it's when you have evidence in front of you, that's the game changer. And this movie, I wanted to ask you about the rated R thing, because when I first read this, not having seen the film, I thought, oh, great, Hollywood's giving Unplanned the Mel Gibson Passion of the Christ treatment. That's ridiculous. But it's very visceral, and not just your performance, but what happens to Abby as you portray her. It's it's a realistic depiction. There's an unflinching look
Yeah.
at what happens.
Yeah, I mean, I think that abortion is R-rated, and the NPAA really just admitted that it is a disturbing and violent act. So if this is women's health care, then why is it considered violent and disturbing by Hollywood? I mean, I think it brings it to the forefront of the conversation, because now people who are going around saying, "Oh, there's nothing wrong with having an abortion." Okay, well then why is this movie rated R?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And we don't do it to be gratuitous. Like you said, we do it to tell the truth. And there's nothing about the film that just is bloody and gore for the sake of being bloody and gory. It is just an actual true depiction of what Abby saw. It's intense, yes. It is disturbing, but it's something that America needs to see. And I will say, I took my 9-year-old son to see the movie. I had to shield him at certain points, but he got just as much out of it as any adult I know, and he really did. And there were points, like I said, where he needed to lean in and cover his eyes and ears. Mm-hmm. But he gets it, man. And I think that we sometimes underestimate kids and what they understand. And this is a conversation we need to be having with our kids, because if we're not, somebody else is. Yeah,
agree in full. Children, because they're innocent, they want justice to be done. They don't want. I've got 2 daughters myself, and they've got a nose for fake news. They can tell when you're being authentic.
Yeah.
I understand that Cary Solomon and Chuck Konzelman refused to alter any of the scenes just for the sake of living with rated R. And I think the rated R is going to backfire. I think this is going to be rated R for recommended by people who want others to see the film.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I have said from the very beginning, I have so much admiration and respect for Chuck and Cary, because they have been such faithful leaders. Every part of this production has been strategically planned in prayer. So anything that they have done, I am just fully in support of. I know that they are really dedicating this film to the Lord.
I never thought about the rated R being a backhanded admission of the stark and brutal nature of abortion procedures. All the more brutal the closer you get to birth. And I was thinking about the phrase, abortion should be safe, legal, and rare.
Right.
Why rare? Why not morning, noon, and night?
That's not the mantra anymore, though. I mean, the liberal agenda is making abortion available on demand. Let's be real. These new radical laws that are being passed in New York and Vermont are proof that it's not about making abortion rare. That's not the case at all. And then if you want to go further and talk about abortion being safe, people are saying, well, if Roe v. Wade is overturned, women are going to have these back alley abortions. Well, you know what? Those kind of unsafe procedures are happening right now already. Yeah. You go to checkmyclinic.org, which is partnered with Abby's Foundation. You can see the health records of any abortion clinic across the United States. They are not good. A lot of these clinics don't meet the health requirements to pass inspection. So there's so many people that are just blind to the things that are happening. And I really hope that this movie is going to wake them up to say, okay, what am I missing here? Mm-hmm. Even if they're a critic, they have to go and say, okay, well, if they're saying this, and what's the truth? And then they have to find the truth for themselves.
I never thought about this safe, legal, and rare thing. I think that may be something that belongs to the Clinton era. And now you see this whole brand of pro-choice activists now with T-shirts like, I don't regret my abortion. It's like, yes, it's killing a baby. What's your point? Move on. There's a hardening of the positions. And
I think that people all have their own ways of coping with trauma in their life. And that is definitely one thing that I think women do, is they harden up and they try to put on this tough exterior and say, I don't regret it at all. When the reality is, it's a traumatic thing. No woman walks into an abortion clinic confident and happy to have an abortion. That is just not true. Abortion happens because women feel vulnerable and weak. They don't go in because they're confident, strong women. So for someone to come out of that situation and have a shirt that says, I don't regret my abortion, that's someone who's really dealing with something that they haven't come to terms with yet.
Yeah, it's almost like they're proving too much by the T-shirt. Mm-hmm. One of the things that impresses me about Abby as a person is that she smothers you, and by you I mean the other side, the people with whom she used to work and all the people who maybe are listening now are considering abortion, she smothers you with kindness. She's full of joy. There's no Bible thumping. There's no moralizing. There's this insight, and you bring it across well playing her in the film, that people who walk into a clinic think they're going to be happy. They don't wake up on a Tuesday and go, how can I offend God and kill my baby? I know, abortion. There's a desire there to be peaceful and happy, to have a solution provided that's going to help. Of course, it backfires.
Yeah. Yeah. Someone I heard talk about this, I think it was Victoria Robinson with Save the Stork. She said, abortion is a temporary solution to a permanent problem. And she said she's a post-abortive woman herself, and she's seen the movie, and she said that the abortion is something she's had to live with and thought about for her entire life, and she will until the day she dies.
The film, I'm not going to do any spoiler alerts, but it's the kind of story that it's paradoxical because it's gentle, but it's also it's brutal in the after effects and what flows from the decision to have an abortion. And I think it's something that everyone who watches, it's going to be personal for them. I just read your Fox essay where you talk about your mom's disclosure to you. For folks who have never heard that, I know you've probably been asked about it, but I wanted to ask you about what your mother disclosed to you when she learned that you had the role and you unfolded what the movie's about. What did she tell you?
Yeah, so when I booked the role, I was only given a 5-hour notice to get on the plane, head out, pack my bags, be in Oklahoma for 7-8 weeks to film. And without hesitation, I had prayed about it. I knew the answer was going to be yes. Got on the plane. Nobody knew I was gone except for my husband, my son, my sister. So my mom called me on the 4th day and had no idea what I was doing. I wanted to share with her about the movie. I was very hesitant in how I was going to do that because she had told me when she was in high school she'd had an abortion. I didn't want her to think that I loved her any less or that I was judging her, because this is a really beautiful movie about grace and hope and forgiveness, and I wanted to express that to her. So as I started explaining Abby's story, she became very emotional, and to the point that I just could feel her spirit breaking. She said to me, "Ashley, I need to tell you something that I never told you before. What you don't know is that when I was 19, I was in the clinic for the second time, and I had been called back. I was being examined on the table by a very pregnant nurse. I got very sick to my stomach. I knew I couldn't go through with it. I got up, I walked out, and I chose you." I never knew that story. I had no idea that I had been spared. My life was spared from abortion because no one ever told me. Like, this was not a conversation that you just, like your dad's just like, "Hey, when we were pregnant with you, we thought about having an abortion. We went to the clinic." Like, no, that wasn't a conversation we had. And it's also very different to hear your parents say, like, "We considered abortion," versus "I was on the table."
Yeah.
I mean, literally seconds, minutes away from not having the opportunity to live the life that you've lived is a lot to process. And especially sitting on set, getting ready to tell Abby Johnson's story. What? I mean, it blew my mind that God had just brought my story full circle to be here for such a time as this, to tell Abby's story to the world.
Has your mom seen the film?
She hasn't yet. She's going to see it for the first time on Wednesday. So very soon.
It's just so, only, this is something only the Holy Spirit could have arranged. If you tried to sell that story as a script, they would laugh, saying, "Yeah, right."
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah, so
but
go ahead.
I found that my story is a lot of people's story. Since I've come out and talked about it, a lot of followers and fans have reached out to me to say, "I never told this to anybody, but I was in the same position as your mom." I can't even believe how, anyone who was born, like you said, from 1973, it could have easily been you or me.
Yeah. I've seen a T-shirt campaign. "I survived Roe v. Wade." I made it through. Amazing. I also think the film is going to touch people who've lost children. The scene that really got me at the premiere, I'll tell you flat out, was the speech that you as Abby gives through the bars of all those flowers, addressing her deceased children. My wife and I lost a baby girl 7 years ago at age 15 days. And that conversation, I think a lot of people who've lost children from miscarriage and abortion, or even in early infancy, are really that's just going to be a moment of lightning in a bottle, where if you've been resisting shedding a tear, or if you've just been trying to look at the movie as a remote viewer, that's gonna come crashing down, and that can lead to very healing conversations.
Yeah, absolutely, I agree. That has been a big talking point after the screenings, especially for men. A lot of men have really resonated with that scene. I think it's the tipping point, like you said, where they've tried to hold it together for the whole movie, and then it gets to that point and they're just like, oh, I've lost it. But it's also just so beautiful for Abby's testimony, really, to be able to have that conversation, so to speak, with her children, to say, I'm sorry, to reconcile, and know that someday she will be reunited in heaven with open, wide, forgiving arms. And it's such a beautiful moment in the story to be able to just have that moment of closure and reconciliation.
Ashley, have you had any pushback from pro-choice actresses or people in the industry who weren't impressed and told you so? What's their reaction been?
No, none at all. None at all. I think of the thousands of people that have reached out to me, I've had maybe 2 people say just really off the wall comments, but people have really been kind. Even pro-choicers, people who don't agree with me, have said to me, I don't agree with you, but I respect you, or I'm going to go see the movie even though I disagree with what the message is. And that's what I really hope for. I really hope that it starts a conversation.
I like to play a game of Flip It when I run into stories like this. In this case, Flip It would look like this. A movie about a pro-life leader who converts to the dark side and becomes a Planned Parenthood director. A, they would never make a movie like that because they know it probably would make a lot of money. And B, if you played that role, you'd be a shoo-in for an Oscar nomination. True or false?
I don't know about that.
I think so. Sure. I mean, just the premise of the film, if you're going up... Go ahead.
Well, I think Sandra Bullock is in production for a movie right now about the filibuster that happened in Texas to play abortion Barbie. I can't remember what the woman's name is.
Oh, that's right. I remember that.
Do you know
headline.
what I'm talking about?
Yes.
So I'm pretty sure that's in production. I don't know how far that's going to go now, given everything that's happening. And everyone keeps talking about this Oscar buzz with Unplanned. Well, first of all, I think God is bigger than anything. So if he wants us to have an Oscar, then by all means, God can open doors no man can close. Here's another thing I think, though, for anyone who is a naysayer about the film. This is a female-driven role. Abby is a dynamic character. The role is challenging physically, mentally, emotionally. It is a stretch for any actor. It is a dream role, regardless of where you stand on the topic. So if Hollywood cannot acknowledge the film for a good piece of art, that says more about their political agenda than ours.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I wanted to go.
See. Yeah, we'll see.
We shall see. Let me go partial. I won't go full metal Catholic. I'll go partial metal Catholic. Have you interacted with Catholics in the production of the film? How have those friendships been, and has this altered your view of Catholicism? Because I understand if you're from North Carolina, you're probably near the buckle of the Bible Belt, I'm thinking. And there's a lot. Catholics and Protestants have so much in common, especially if you're talking about the common enemy of the abortion industry. New friendships are being formed. Just talk a little bit about that.
Well, I was not so familiar with Catholicism beforehand. I identify as non-denominational. My grandmothers were all different denominations. So, for example, one grandmother was Methodist, one was Baptist, and the other was Free Will Pentecostal Holiness. So I got a little bit of everything going on. Yeah. And working on set, what was so cool about being on set was that we had pastors from all different denominations coming in and praying for us. And that was a really beautiful experience. So I think it's a universal thing as Christians that we should all be fighting for life. Catholicism in particular have been warriors that I have seen so far, really just gung-ho about making sure we're protecting the unborn. And I have respect for all denominations. So I've made good friendships with everyone.
One of my mentors is a guy called Peter Kraft. He's sort of America's C.S. Lewis, and he famously said, "Feuding brothers reconcile when a maniac is at the door."
Yeah.
Which I like. Ashley, what are your hopes for the movie?
My biggest hope that people will have a conversation. People will walk out of the theater. It's not some movie you just go watch and have a slice of pizza afterwards and everything's okay. No, you're going to have a conversation. So I'm hoping that when people walk out, they have meaningful conversations with the people that they're with, or their family, their loved ones, and that they understand that there is healing and forgiveness available, and that their eyes are open to truth.
Like The Passion of the Christ, it's not even the kind of movie I'd say, I really liked it, like I liked a musical.
Yeah.
It hits you at a completely different level.
Yeah.
It's personal.
Yeah.
I want to say March 29th, that's the correct debut date?
That is correct.
Call your archbishop, call your pastor, call your friends, get group tickets. It's all about the math of opening weekend, brothers and sisters. Give Unplanned what it deserves, which is a wide reader audience. If that first weekend goes well, it has a chance to have legs all over the world. If you're listening through the magical land of tomorrow on this podcast, go rent it. Support the people who made this. I think it's a big game changer in the way it's done, not just the what, but the way. Ashley Bratcher, thanks for being a gift. Thanks for your time.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
Coming up next, the real Abby Johnson, right here on the Patrick Coffin Show. Touching that dial again, strictly prohibited. Back in a flash. Now I'm happy to bring into the show, as I promised, Abby Johnson, foundress of And Then There Were None, and of course, author of the smash hit book from 2014, Unplanned, which is now the subject of the film, starring Ashley Bratcher, who we just met. Abby Johnson, now you are a supermom with obvious maternal superpowers, taking time out at a busy airport to join us. Great to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Every time I talk to you, Abby, there's more and more things to say. So I haven't prepared a lot because I saw you recently at the Hollywood premiere. I was very moved by Unplanned. And from chatting with Ashley, I can tell you that the people who made this movie are all in, and not just for the message, but for the art and the way the story is told. I just was very moved, and I was struck emotionally at well, I'll tell you my scene, and maybe you've heard this from other people. When you, played by Ashley, are talking to your deceased children through those bars, that to me is the heart of it right there, because it just brings so many things full circle. So, thanks for coming on, first of all.
Yeah, of course.
Is this all surreal for you? You're kind of walking through life, pinching yourself a little bit, and what the Almighty God of the universe has done in your life?
Yeah, it's definitely very surreal. That word's overused too much, but really that's the only thing that really describes what's going on in our life right now. It's a very vulnerable place to be, just having people. It's one thing to write your story, but it's very different to have it out visually, where people can see it. But everybody, who's watched it has really been touched by it, and we know that the critics are coming. The critics are coming.
Yeah.
But we're just really confident in this beautiful film that we've put out, and I tell you what, no matter where you stand on the issue, I think that you do leave this film changed, and that's really what we wanted.
A lot of films, I've nicknamed them by-for. They're films by Christians for Christians. Unplanned knocks down that fourth wall. I can tell you, I will be stunned if someone walks in there of the pro-choice cast of mind who is not shaken to the core. There's so many different elements of the story, and there's no catechism thumping, there's no Bible thumping, there's no finger pointing. It's just what happened to you.
Hey, it's just my story, and but it's an incredible story. I mean, it's God's story, and I happen to believe that God really loves a good conversion story, and people are going to see that in this film, but they're going to see really the gritty truth of what's happening inside of these clinics all around us. I mean, it's not like it's a rare thing. I mean, there's 3,000 abortions happening every single day just in our country. And I think now, I feel like right now in our society, people are really searching for truth, particularly on this issue, because you've got all this crazy stuff happening in, you know, these different states, New York, Vermont, Virginia, New Mexico, and people are like, what is happening? What is going on here? I mean, are we really talking about killing babies in the third trimester? I mean, what are we talking about here? You know? And I think a lot of the conversation, rightly so, has been surrounding late-term abortion, but the overwhelming majority of these procedures are happening in the first trimester, and that's really what this film exposes. And really pulls the curtain back on the overwhelming majority of these procedures that are happening every day.
I noticed that the book did not receive an R rating. There's no parental advisory on the book, but when it comes to filming it, you make a good point about the visual dimension of the story that it just cannot be picked up in a book is very visceral. It's very vivid. There is blood. It's not a slasher movie, but it's an unflinching look at what really happens. And I personally think that this R rating that the MPAA gave you is going to backfire. I think I'm calling it rated R for recommended.
Yeah, it is. You know, I mean, I'll tell you, like, my husband and I watch a lot of PG-13 films, and, you know, we see things on TV, Grey's Anatomy, different things like that. And I was like, really? Like, when we got the rating back, I was like, seriously? Because I see what's on network TV, and it's much more gory and graphic than this is. But I sort of think the MPAA stumbled backwards into the truth by admitting that abortion is an act of violence and that it is disturbing.
That came up with my conversation with Ashley. They're admitting, it's a rated R topic. Someone dies in the procedure.
Exactly. And I do think that I think if kids are going to see this, I do think that they should see it with their parents. I mean, that is the appropriate person to go see this film with, because there does need to be ongoing dialogue and conversation about what they have seen in that film. My kids are down for it, for sure. I mean, every teens and kids are going to have different levels of sensitivity. Sure.
But I always say, if you can't fix it, you can feature it. And there's nothing wrong and no shame in crying at what happens to you in this film. That's a natural response. It would be unnatural if you sat there like a zombie going, interesting, let's go for dinner now, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly. My 12-year-old saw it. And, you know, she was very impacted by it, but in a positive way as well. I mean, I tell people all the time, like, I'd put my 12-year-old up against any pro-choicer any day. Like, she could totally debate them into the ground because for her, it's just so common sense for her. And she's just like, I just don't get it. I don't get how people don't see this as a human being. Like, it just makes no sense to her. And, this film really reinforced that for her.
The tagline on the poster is "What she saw changed everything," and that word "saw" jumped out at me. The turning point scene rather early in the film, not to give a spoiler alert here, but it's seeing the image that helped you go from abortion is a concept, it's part of the rhetoric we use, we're helping women, that stark image of the suction tube and the reaction of the unborn baby. That's not something you can get across in the way that's so pointed, it's so piercing in the film. That's the heart of it there. So this is a long-winded way of asking you, do you think that people need to know what abortion is before we can take steps to stopping it?
I do. I think one of the reasons that abortion has escalated in the way that it has in our society is because the primary victim is unseen. So, you know, we don't see the baby die. I mean, you can see the aftermath. You can see the gross pictures, but you're not actually watching the humanity being snuffed out of a life. And for the first time, really, for the first time ever in a feature film, you're going to be able to see that. And that's very impactful. I mean, look, no matter where you sit on the issue, know what you support, right? So if you walk away from this film and you go, well, that was tragic, but I still support it. Okay, then you're being honest, right?
Yeah.
But don't make up excuses for why you don't want to see it. Or I have a friend who's a very well-known pro-choice author who went into a screening and she walked out of it in the first 5 minutes.
Really?
And I said, well, why did you walk out? And she said, oh, I just couldn't watch that. And I thought, but you're advocating for this. Don't you want to know what you believe?
Own it, sister. You got to own it.
Exactly.
What were you doing when then the idea was presented to you that this is going to be filmed, that there'll be a movie iteration of your book?
Yeah, so I was at home and I just got this really casual email from these two guys named Chuck Konzelman and Cary Solomon. Never heard of them before in my life. And they said, we're film directors and we'd like to turn your book Unplanned into a film. And I was like, okay, sure. And I sort of was like, okay, there's like two guys in their man cave, with like iPhones and a Mac computer or something. That's
right.
Sort of what I was thinking. And I was like, sure, yeah, you know how to do movies. Sure you do. And I was telling my husband about it, and I was like, can you believe I got this email? And he was like, you should always look up their names before you send them back a rejection. And so he looked them up actually, and he was like, oh my gosh, Abby, like these are the guys that did God's Not Dead, which initially was not super impressive to me because I wasn't a huge fan of the movie. I thought it was super cheesy. And I was like, well, that's cool. They were very successful in making that film, but that's not my story. Like, I don't have a Christian cheesy story.
Even if it did make 70 million smackers or something.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't care. Like, if they're going to tell the story, it's going to have to be authentic. And we may not get the Dove family seal of approval, right? And I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
They came down to Austin, we met with them, and I just love them. And they said to me, it's time to take the training wheels off the Christian film industry, and we're ready to do it with we're ready to do it with Unplanned. And so I was like, okay, let's do it. So
the casting of Ashley Bratcher, when I saw her picture on the poster before I saw the movie, was one thing. But as I was watching the movie at the premiere, I closed my eyes and I said to my wife, "She sounds like Abby. She's sported the same tood that my friend Abby Johnson has." Have you been told that a lot? That there's it's like she's. It reminds me of Johnny Cash's. Apparently, Johnny Cash selected actor Joaquin Phoenix to play him in a movie before he passed away, obviously.
Okay.
But you wouldn't think Joaquin Phoenix is not that physical thing. It's not quite there, but he kind of incarnates it. He renders it present. Yeah, as Ashley does for you.
Yeah, she did such a good job, and I did not know her. I mean, I'd never seen anything she had been in. I'd heard about a movie she was in, and I heard it was terrible. So I was like, ooh, I don't know. But once I talked to her for the first time, we just immediately had a connection, and I was like, yeah, she's the one. This is the girl to play me in this film. And she was so good about doing all of her research and really trying to hone in on my personality. And we have similar personalities anyway, so that came pretty naturally, I think.
Yeah. One of the things that came up in my conversation with her is that there really are no I've never heard of a film that tells the reverse story of Unplanned. So, pro-life leader suddenly sees the light, decides they need to become a Planned Parenthood director. That film is not really filmable because I don't think it would make any or much money. And I said she would be a shoo-in for an Oscar nomination if that had been told in reverse. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, there's very few stories of people who were, pregnancy center directors who are now running a Planned Parenthood clinic. You just don't really see that. Wouldn't that make the media, though? We would know if it happened.
Exactly
because
right.
It would be all over.
Exactly
all
right.
over the media. So the fact that we haven't heard about it tells me it hasn't happened.
Well, also, Unplanned stands in the stream of a recent tradition among pro-life filmmakers, like Nick Loeb with Roe v. Wade, Gosnell with Kermit Gosnell. I thought Gosnell, no one's going to see this movie, but it did very, very well, and its proof of concept is the number of people who have been changed in their worldview. Do you have any anecdotes yet? You must have had people come up to you, except for the chickens who won't actually own what they stand for.
Watch it.
Any anecdotes yet? Like feedback from people?
Yeah, we have. Actually, even in the private screenings, there were some people who saw it, and they had brought friends with them who were pro-choice. They actually didn't know that they were pro-choice, but they were like, "Oh yeah, all my friends are pro-life. Let's go see this film." And they took them, and we've already heard of stories of people who walked away saying, "I can never support this again after seeing this film." So I mean, we're already seeing lives that have been changed and conversions taking place, and a lot of healing taking place. Women and men who have sort of suffered in silence after their past experiences, and now they're finally getting healing. Some of these people have lived with this for 40 years and have never told anybody, and they saw the film, and now they're like, I need help. So that is a huge, huge victory for the Lord.
There were a lot of sobs during the whole film. It's kind of an unremitting ride. I was laughing with our mutual friend Jeff Paradowski afterward that his character Kaiser Johnson really brought a levity. The sort of strutting Texas attorney. That was like the almost comic relief. You did need it. Yeah, it was a welcome change up.
Yes. Right. Yeah, you definitely needed that. My husband, they cast him as funny. Jeff was very good. I was like, I'm funny. They could have made me funny. They didn't make me funny, but it's okay.
And you are now, as we record this, looking forward to the appearance of baby number 8.
That's right. Yeah, let's hope it doesn't happen on the plane.
Yeah, yes, our lips to God's ears. What are your hopes for Unplanned, the movie version, Abby?
You know what? I just hope that I hope that it does spur about conversion, of course, for people who, are pro-choice and now they're pro-life. Of course, that's like the big hope, right? But I hope that I think it allows a conversion experience to take place inside of each one of us too. That we can no longer be apathetic, that this has to be a front issue for all of us, that we have to be activated and involved, and that from what I'm hearing from people, that's exactly what's happening.
Well, it's not an easy film to watch. It's like Saving Private Ryan or The Passion of the Christ. You don't come out of it saying, I like that. They should make a musical out of it.
Right.
But it's beautifully rendered, and as hard as it is to watch, I thank you on behalf of the listeners and viewers for just putting yourself out there, telling the story, and letting them run onto the meadow of Hollywooddom. And so thanks for being a gift. I know you got a flight to catch, so thanks for joining us. AbbyJohnson.org, that's the best place to connect with you?
Yeah, that's the best place.
All right. Well, brothers and sisters, if you're listening to this in the first week leading up to March 29th, go see Unplanned. Call your pastor. Email your bishop, your archbishop, your cardinal. This is a movie that it needs to get a punchy opening weekend. It's all about math. Yeah. Seats in those chairs. That's how hearts and minds are won, and that's how the film will be able to reach people all over the world. And so if you're listening to this in the magic land of tomorrow, don't forget to rent it and support Abby and the filmmakers. Kudos to Chuck Konzelman and Cary Solomon, and to Ashley, and to you, Abby Johnson. Thanks for being a gift. Good to talk to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
All right, I thank Abby Johnson and Ashley Bratcher for today's broadcast. Remember, the doors close on the same day that Unplanned opens. March 29th, the doors to coffinnation.com will close. It's the world's largest culture building membership site on planet Earth. Don't wait to miss out. We only open the doors 3 times a year. So go to coffinnation.com and watch the trailer. Sign up. We'd love to have you on the inside. In the meantime, be a saint. What else is there? Hey, this is Patrick Coffin. If you like what you see and hear, and you want to see and hear more, consider joining Coffin Nation as a full member. Just click right here
and find out more about what that means. Nipsey, my fedora. That's Coffin Nation, the world's largest online community of culture builders. Click right here. See you on the inside.